You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Steve Short. Steve is a travel tech executive and best-selling author and speaker, and he helps young professionals build financial confidence through simple, actionable money frameworks. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, you. Appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Now, we were just talking about this. Young people have very, very little training on personal finance, and it's been a problem for a while. And it sounds like that's something that you have tackled in your book, which is called A Simple Road. Is that it?
The Simple Road Toward Financial Freedom.
Boom. Okay. That's the book. And now you're on a mission to help younger people learn about personal finance. So what are those frameworks? What do they need to know?
Again, thanks for having me on. Yeah, we talk about a number of things in the book, but as you mentioned at the start, unfortunately, our children are graduating today, high school or college, with really no personal finance skills. It's generally not mandated in schools. We teach them algebra, we teach them science, we teach them this other stuff, but not personal finance. And so what we've got are a lot of graduates that are out there sort of living paycheck to paycheck and not saving for their future just because they don't know any different. And so we see it in the workforce today that 2/3 of employees are financially stressed. They're spending time at work. Financially stressed employees are 2 times more likely to be job hunting. And so in our book, we really just kind of go step by step. The book really ages. It's kind of we all age. It's really, the first chapter is really about positive thinking in terms of believing that you can achieve these goals that you want to when you're older, because that's a good, as I'm sure you would attest, you got to really believe it before it can come to fruition. And then we just talk through different, from budgeting to, we have a model called the 50-20-30 Save First model, which basically is a simple framework that's easy for anybody to apply, which is 50% of your paycheck goes to needs. And then sometimes you'll see 30% going to wants. We put that at the back. We think it's more of a priority to do your savings. So the 50-20 is 20% of your paycheck to savings, and then 30% toward wants. And 20% is a goal. There's a lot of people that are just starting out that are like, well, I can't put aside, I don't have the money to put aside 20%. So we are always very cautious to say, just set aside something, at least get your 401k match. But if you could start at 5%, maybe go to 10%, and just have it sort of snowball, you're really going to be set up for the future.
Okay, so this is really nothing new, the buckets. T. Harv Eckert used to talk about that, right? A lot of people. Is it just that people have aged out and don't know who those people are now, so we just have to re-educate them on these buckets?
There might be, yeah. The content that we have is really, our goal was to put it in a straightforward manner, and people don't. Unfortunately, the kids just don't know it, and they're not hearing it from their parents a lot of times. And so the analogy that I always use is, I knew how to drive, but when I had to teach my kids how to drive, it was a whole different scenario. And we've heard loud and clear from the reviews on Amazon that there's a lot of people like, I knew some of this stuff, but I didn't know how to teach it to my kids. And so while these concepts aren't necessarily new concepts at all, they are to the majority of the kids because they've never heard such a thing. So they don't know where to go. And so they're living paycheck to paycheck without knowing they should set aside money for an emergency fund because no one ever taught them that, or set aside money for retirement, things along those lines.
Okay, so apart from setting aside money, what are the other simple steps?
As we set aside money is obviously key. With the next steps we get into is after you set aside that money, what should you do with it? So we do get into bucketing, as you kind of mentioned there in the next few chapters, which is, as we call it, bucket 1, or your short-term needs the next 2 years. And we talk about things that you can do with that money. So that could be your emergency fund, which we suggest is 3 to 6 months of your normal living expenses, just for you lose your job or you have to fix your car or whatever the case may be. You've got that money set aside. And then we talk about 2 to 5 years, which is bucket 2, which might be a down payment on a house, or maybe you have a big expense coming up. And then bucket 3 is your 5+ years is your retirement. And so depending on where that money's going, we've got things to consider. We think the bucket one, the 1 to 2 stuff should be in stuff that's very safe. There's no chance of that money going down. So money market funds, things along those lines, something where you earn a little bit of interest. Bucket 2 and 3 might be a little bit more, you might be able to get a little bit more of a return, CDs, things along those lines. And then really bucket 5 is where the majority of this conversation, especially for our audience of Gen Z, is they really need to be focused on 5+ years out into the future. And we really suggest that that money be into the stock market or give heavy consideration to that, because over the long haul, the stock market has had the biggest returns. So if you can get in an S&P 500 fund, things along those lines, that's what we recommend. So that's sort of the middle part of the book. And then as it evolves, we've got just different things that are critical at different life stages. So in the middle of the book, we have when life gets more complicated. That's when you might have a mortgage, you might have kids, you might have things happening in your life at that point that's a little bit more complicated. You need to be thinking about life insurance. And we go through examples of kind of what that is and how it applies. And then the last part of the book is late in the game, which we see a lot of people today, and the research shows there's a lot of people today that maybe didn't save the way that they wanted to early, but now they've got kids that have left the house. Maybe they don't have their expenses anymore. They've got a good job that's hopefully bringing in a good salary, typically is the case late in the game. And they've got this opportunity to sort of catch up for maybe the things that they didn't do earlier. So the book really ages as we all age. It's a hardcover book. Our goal is to try to put it into someone's hands, and then they put it on their back, bookshelf, and then pull it out maybe once a year or so, just to sort of flip through some of the stuff on where they are in their life stage.
You're retired now, right?
I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so what made you want to write the book and teach people all this?
Really started with my kids graduated. So they entered the workforce. I sat down with my oldest and we started talking about 401ks and setting up money. And I was just, if you put aside, she had a typical job, right? Entering the workforce right out of college. And I just started talking to her, like, have you heard any of these concepts? No. And I was going through an Excel document that's saying, if you set aside this amount of money, which she could do, you'll have $1 million in 20 years from now. And she was like, it sort of blew her mind. Like, how does that happen? I'm like, well, you've got the value of time. And the other part is you don't have to save $1 million to have $1 million. You put in about 250,000 stock market returns and company matches and salary growth and all that other stuff makes up for it. And that was just a concept to her that she was never taught. And so the concept of not having to save $1 million to have $1 million was an interesting one. And then my next daughter graduated 2 years later, and she was a business and finance major, and she didn't have any of this. And she was communicating to me that she had roommates that were living paycheck to paycheck, even though they had good jobs. They lost their job. They may not make rent, where they were all sharing rent. And so I started having a conversation with my friend, Mark, who's a financial advisor, who's my co-writer on this. And I go, do you see this as a financial advisor? He goes, I see it every day. And so he said, let's write a book on it. And so that has been our focus, because no one focuses on Gen Z and those new to the workforce, because most people writing a book, as you know, are probably trying to sell something else. And this is a passion project for us. Mark's not trying to get these customers or anything like that. And so it was really a passion project for us. It sort of fits a corner of the market that no one's going after. And so it's been, we're excited. It's been very well received, but we're just trying to spread the word as much as we can.
So how does this differ from, what's his name again? Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey.
How does this differ? Have you seen his course?
I have not, but I do know of his, some of the work that he does. There's plenty, we're happy to have others come along for the ride, or us join their ride, whatever it is, in terms of teaching this next generation. I was involved in Junior Achievement. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Junior Achievement, but it's a national organization, teaches personal finance skills in really high school and younger. It's a great organization, teaches a ton of great information. And so the concepts that we're talking, again, we're not coming up with revolutionary concepts, but a lot of times what happens in some of these programs is maybe you have to, it doesn't resonate with a certain age group because they don't want to live on eating ramen every day, or they don't want to not have their lattes or their avocado toast. And unfortunately, that's been sort of the narrative out there, is you can't have any of these great things until you take care of this other stuff. We tried to frame it a little bit differently, and that's where our 50-20-30 works great, is if you can set aside 20% for your savings, then you should be good. Don't overthink it. And if you want to be able to set aside 20% and go have, a nice dinner or go on a trip or go buy lattes or avocado toast, you have permission to do that because you've already saved, for your future self that's out there. So, like I said, our goal was to try to make it as simple as possible. A lot of times this work is intentionally made confusing. So that way people are like, I don't know what to do. I need to hire somebody to help me with that. And that's the opposite of what we're talking here is like, if you just follow this thing, you're going to be set up. You don't need to hire a professional. You can do this yourself. Most of it. There's some stuff that we get into these STL moments that are stop, talk, and listen. Times you really do need to talk to a professional.
Okay. So basically it's batch and get your buckets in order and do save. And I feel like problem with human beings, and it's a classic, the latte problem, right? It's they're not keeping track that every time they buy that $5 coffee, right? And they're doing it every day. They're not doing the mathematics. They do it once a day. Well, that's, $25 if it's only on the weekday, but they're doing so it's $35 a week. Okay, so it's $70 for 2 weeks, $140 a month if it's only one coffee,
Right.
$140 a month. So they're going to have to make at least $200 a month just to buy that cup of coffee. And when you actually do these numbers for Gen Z, and I do that, my daughter doesn't do that, but I did it with one of her friend's face dropped.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, I never thought of that. I said, you have to always do your numbers, because it's not one cup of coffee. Now, if you want a latte, that should be once a week. Great, it's a treat. But she said, oh my goodness, I got to stop buying these coffees. I said, yes, you do. People don't do the numbers. It's what you said. Sure, go get the coffee. But not every day. Don't have dinner out every night. A lot of Gen Zers also use Uber Eats every day.
Yeah.
So that literally means most of their paycheck is going on Uber Eats. Smart people don't use Uber Eats every day. Even very wealthy people don't even use Uber Eats because, well, they'd rather just eat at home.
Right.
There's also that. I think that you feel like it's just being conscious of the spending in the first place.
Yeah, I think we talk about budgeting, which obviously everybody hates, that word at all. But it's so critical just to do exactly what you're talking about. Where is your money going? So, I mean, if you take the 50%, let's just say somebody's making $4,000 a month, just for round numbers, $48,000 a year. And you take the 50% of that toward your needs and the 20%, you just start doing the math. And then usually what happens through our presentations is people are like, I did the math and I don't have any money to be able to do that. Okay, well, let's now look at your want. Where is that 30% going? So instead of 30% going for things you want, what is it? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Okay, now let's drill into that 40%. What is it? And a lot of times is what you talked about. It's the coffee runs, or it's apps that I've got on my phone that I don't pay any attention to. Or we do talk a lot in our presentations also about the do-over button. How many times do you wish you could go through your checking account or your credit card on something 30, 60, 90 days ago and go, God, I wish I could do that over. I wish I could hit the undo button and then, make that go away. So that's a key part. That's what makes this framework, though, so simple, so to speak, is the 20% for savings includes a company match. So if you can set aside, say you got a 5% company match, and you can set aside 15% in your 401k, you're in a good spot. And so as long as you've got enough money coming in afterwards to be able to go lattes, let's just say you love having a latte every morning, that's what brings you joy, and you've got the funds to be able to do it, and because you're already set aside your 20%, then go for it. There's other people that would rather go on a trip.
But actually, most people, when you say, would you rather have that coffee every morning, or maybe just make it at home and put it in a thermos, or would you rather have a vacation at the end of, and they always say, yeah, I'd rather have the vacation.
Right.
Because most people would rather have an amazing vacation and make the coffee at home and have a latte every now and then, because you can make coffee at home and put it in a thermos. Even fancy coffee in the end is way cheaper, right?
Tastes good. Just as much caffeine.
Just takes, Okay, cool. So you're talking about the 401k. What about people that don't have a job? What about all these young entrepreneurs out there that don't want to have a job and there is no 401k? They would just not do the 401k for now, right? because not everybody can set up a solo 401k. You have to have quite a bit of money for that.
Right.
Right. So they then should just do the setting up a mutual fund, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We talk about sort of automating things. So you do all the same exact numbers. You figure out what that number is that is your target goal to set aside for savings. What we recommend, and we kind of go through step by step in the book, is really taking a step back. A lot of people don't know about brokerage accounts, but we said go to Schwab, go to Fidelity. You can set up this account, and we talk through automation. Let's just say, for argument's sake, it's $300 a month or whatever. That money, you automate it on your payday. So your payday, you get paid on the 1st and the 15th. As soon as that hits your checking account, we suggest having that money come immediately out of your checking account right into your brokerage account. And then you can tell Schwab or Fidelity or whoever you've got as your brokerage account, please invest that in the S&P 500 index fund, which is something we talk about in the book a lot, where you're investing in 500 different funds and diversify and all that. Automation is key in this process. We all know how we are from a framework standpoint, that if all of a sudden we've got the money sitting in a checking account, we see it in the checking account, and then we spend the money that's in the checking account. So the quicker you can set up the automation, I think people just don't really know about it, how easy it is to be able to do it. And I was talking to my son that graduated a few years ago. He just set it up an automatic deferral thing. In about a year, we sat down and went, I'm like, look how much money you have in there. And it's just really, just small amounts can really add up over time. The example in our book, we have this imaginary person by the name of Pat. And Pat has an entry-level job, $50,000 a year. And that's the example that I gave about my daughter earlier. We use that in the book. So it shows 20% when you set it aside and you get a match, or if you don't get the match, just putting that money aside, the biggest thing you have is time, because you don't need that money until you retire. So you've got at least 20, 30, 40 years from now to just let it grow. But that's why the bucketing is so critical, is to make sure you put money that you don't need to touch for 5 years in the stock market versus having to pull it out. Because not only does that derail you, you've got tax implications, and you don't let the money just max out the opportunity to really grow over the long haul.
Okay, great. So, what would you, you've had a successful career and you've dealt with lots of money, not just, helping people with the very, beginnings. This is good. You're starting with the beginnings. What would you say, what mindset or philosophy would you want to share with people here before we close off?
I think that just starting small, especially if somebody's not investing at all, while 20% is the goal, start with something. We do hear a lot on our presentations that we do to businesses about, I don't have any money to do it. It's like, okay, well, let's take that back a little bit. Do you have 1%? Well, yeah, of course I have 1%. Okay, well, let's start with 1%. And once that happens, what we see is people are like, okay, I could live with that 1%. 1% becomes 2%, 2%, and it just sort of snowballs after that. And one of the things we talk about too early on in the book is what is your why? Why are you saving for the future? Not just, well, I should do it. No, like, what do you envision in the future? Oh, I'd like to give more to charity. I'd like to travel the world once a year. I'd like to do whatever it is that you want to. Okay, great. Let's sort of talk about that. Let's write that down as sort of your goal. So that way, when you're going from 1% to 5% or trying to get to 20% or whatever it is, you're remembering what my ultimate goal is, retiring early, whatever the case may be, that there's a real mission that's out there that's helping you sort of make it tangible in terms of what your savings is going to.
Thing about the 1% is they don't notice that. You're not going to notice a 1%, but then it's like, hey, then they're motivated. Now I see that 1%. It was something, it wasn't that hard. 2, well, that's still not going to be hard. Then they might start saying, well, maybe I don't need that latte because I'd rather put it in. And it becomes
Right.
competition with themselves, and they can start measuring it. And that's exciting because then they see, okay, it was small, but something's happening. And then human beings generally, they're just going to put a chunk in after a while.
Right.
Let's try to go for 5 now. So I think it's very motivating, and a good rule for people that are starting, to start the idea of investing and putting. Great idea. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for turning up, and thank you for listening, everybody. And we will see you on the next episode. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jean Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jean Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.